buzz. I guess it's nothing to do with what I'm doing, but there's a little bit of a buzz in the room. My name is Tron Compton-Engle. I'm the Director of IT at the Case Western Reserve University School of Law. And I'll be talking today about a system that we developed for video, really related to sort of practical skills training for students. So students who were being videoed, where they were interviewing a mock client and then getting feedback from an instructor on that. So this is not meant to be a system that is a grand, it solves all problems related to like classroom video where you're showing a PowerPoint and the instructor. This is really targeted at sort of smaller, like a one-to-one type of situation. So why did we develop this system? Really the big reason was because the director of the library said, I'm sick of checking out VHS tapes. Can't you do something digital so that we don't have to check out VHS tapes? And associated with that, of course, you can't really get VHS equipment anymore, so we really need to find some way to get beyond VHS. But also we were getting comments from students about it being inconvenient checking out the VHS tapes, or comments from the faculty about it being inconvenient. So we wanted to develop a system that was more convenient for faculty and students, and therefore hopefully drive a little bit more usage by faculty and students. So here, when I met with the director of a program we have called Focused Problem Solving, which is a skills sort of type course that we have for students. And this director of the program talked to me about his requirements, and his requirements were very demanding, and not all of these actually got met. But here's what he came to me in saying that he wanted. He was very concerned that students wouldn't be able to right-click on the video and download it. Because then the video could end up on YouTube, and who knows what would happen. And I explained to him there's really no way of preventing that. I mean, a kid could pull out their cell phone and record the video on their screen and post it on YouTube. I mean, there's screen capture programs all over the place that are free. So there's really no way to stop that. But what we agreed as a compromise is that they can at least go to the video, right-click, and do download. At least then we're making it a little bit difficult for them to post it on YouTube. He also was concerned that it be password protected, so that only whoever the instructor wants to see it can see it. And in this particular class, it's a little bit more complicated because they sort of have a rolling access thing where you can't see your video or anyone else's video until you've been recorded. And then once you're recorded, you can look at your classmates, or at least your group's videos. And that way you can sort of see what everyone else did in your group and get some ideas on what they did better, or maybe they didn't do as well. So there was sort of a rolling access to the videos, which made it a little bit more difficult. It also became clear it needed to be really easy to use because the faculty just wanted this as a convenience. It wasn't like they were technical people who were willing to learn a lot in order to get this to work. So it had to be something that was really pretty intuitive. The faculty director of this program also said that he wanted commenting on video. Now, it turns out that when we actually talked to the instructors in the program, they didn't care about commenting. They were going to do it the old way, where they just watch the video and give their written feedback to the students. So in the initial version, we dropped the commenting because you got to start somewhere, and that was not a problem for the instructors. Now, since then, we've had other instructors come to us and say they do want the commenting. So we're back to programming again. We're trying to add a commenting feature in, and I'll do a little demo of where we're at. We're not finished with that, but we're partway through implementing a commenting feature, a really basic, easy-to-use commenting feature. It'd be interesting to have your feedback on what you feel is necessary in a commenting feature. The faculty member also said that he wanted the ability to view it live and have it be password protected, and that's another requirement that did not get met. And maybe it could be version 3 or 4, but I don't think that was really a very important requirement. It was just be sort of nice if I could check in on some of my instructors live and see what they're up to. Here's the requirements that I added that didn't come from the faculty or the students, but I wanted a system that was so easy that it wasn't a significant burden to my AV staff. I mean, they're already doing tons of recording. They really didn't have time for a system that was going to really significantly increase the amount of time they spent on this. And that's actually really hard because VHS is super easy. I mean, there's no doubt about it. I mean, it's super easy. So how do you come up with a system that really is not significantly more time-consuming than VHS? That's tough to do. But I think we came up with a system that, in the end, is really pretty close to VHS in terms of time. Even DVD takes a lot more time than VHS. And also, the faculty member didn't mention this, but I wanted something that was platform neutral because, you know, it's getting to be 40% of our students are using Macs, and I knew that if we didn't make it platform neutral, that we would get a lot of, you know, flack for not having it be available on the Mac. So we took a look at some contenders for, you know, how we might be able to do this, and particularly because there was the initial requirement of commenting. Media notes seemed like a pretty good option. You know, the great strength of Media Note is its very robust commenting. We didn't end up doing Media Notes largely because it became clear working with the faculty that they weren't really going to spend the time to learn Media Notes. They just didn't have, they weren't invested enough in this particular technology to take the time to learn it. And also, it did have problems in terms of distributing the comment file and the video together that would have been time-consuming. Permissions management, there wasn't like a built-in permissions management that would have been time-consuming. So once again, I think for my staff, both my IT staff and my AV staff, it would have been a significant more amount of time than VHS. We also looked at a product called Communicoach. I don't know if anyone looked at this. This is web-based, has built-in permission management, so it has a lot of our requirements. At the time we were looking at it, though, this has changed. If you know, if we were to do this again, we might take more of a close look at Communicoach. But at the time, Communicoach didn't support Macs, and it didn't support Active Directory integration, which was big for us because we're an Active Directory shop. And I know they've added Mac compatibility, and they may have added Active Directory integration as well. So that has changed a little bit since we started this project. We also looked at our own Windows Media Server at the time. Now we actually have a Flash server, but at the time we had a Windows Media Server and thought, well, maybe we could just use something we already have. There's no cost. But you know, with streaming, you get the ability of disabling right-click and download, which was one of the requirements. But permissions management would have been a nightmare with a Windows Media Server. And you know, once again, that cross-platform compatibility, you can do it on a Mac, but you know, it's not great. I mean, you have to download that Flip for Mac, or whatever it is, Flip for Mac, and it's not great. So we dropped that. So what we ended up doing is we ended up doing our own thing. We ended up using IIS with some Flash to build our own system. The pros of that are, you know, as a previous session said, almost everyone already has a Flash player. 99%, 96%, whatever, you hear different figures, but basically everyone with a computer that goes on the internet has Flash players, so you don't have to worry about cross-platform compatibility. We were able to do a system where it integrated with our Active Directory, so the permission management was pretty easy, and also where we could delegate that to the faculty member, so the faculty member could decide who would see the video, and that took us out of the equation. Nice for us not to have to worry about that. We were able to also, you know, not have them right-click and download, one of the requirements. I think the very most important thing is it was just so easy to use. There was like virtually no learning curve, and then we really needed that for this particular project. And at least it was relatively easy for AV. We actually made a lot of improvements over time, and I'll get into that later, where it did get easier and easier for AV, easier and easier for the faculty and for the students, but it wasn't too burdensome on them initially. Now it's actually quite easy for them. As far as the cons, there was no commenting initially. We had some problems with the Flash player. Basically, for the system to work, people had to have a really new version of Flash, Flash 9 or 10. And even though almost everyone has Flash, we did have people hitting the site that didn't have Flash 9 or 10, and that was causing some problems. It worked, but they would get this huge delay, and they would assume that it wasn't working, and you know, sort of abandon it at that point. So we did have some issues there. And also, we were using progressive download, which means the video is actually being downloaded to your computer. It's not readily accessible. It's not completely obvious where it is, but that video does go to your local hard drive. And you know, so once again, that problem of maybe it's going to get posted on YouTube, there could be a little bit of concern there. But once again, if you watch a video, you can grab a video. So I'll just show a little demo of it, and then we'll get into some more of the particulars. After I do a demo, I'll talk a little bit more about the technology and the process behind it. So this is, it's not pretty, but it's just meant to be easy, where a student can go there and view a video. So they just click. We've basically removed everything off it for the summer from the spring, but typically there'd be a lot more classes here where they could pick their class. They just pick their class. They log in with their university username and password. There's no special password that they have to use. And then
is that normally something they do as soon as they turn on the computer? Are they logging in?
You mean, like, does it pass through the authentication, or are they using that?
Special password thing that they're doing just for this video?
Right, it is just for this video, but it's the same username and password that they use for everything, for their email, for literally everything. Through AD? Yeah. Yes, right. So it's controlled through our Active Directory groups. Yeah, and our university has Active Directory, but we control our own groups. It is behind us are just Active Directory groups, which is really easy for us because we can import like classes into our Active Directory. If there is a class where like everyone can see it, it's very easy for us to do that. So this is a real one that a student did in the spring. I get permission from her to use it. So you can see that it is progressive download, that it starts playing before it finishes downloading. So it has a streaming-like experience, even though it's not literally streaming. And you can see that the video quality is pretty good, and the audio quality is pretty good. It works. And part of why we were able to retain that video quality is that actually in the second version of the system, there is no encoding whatsoever. So it's the file without going through some kind of encoding server.
Not really.
So let's talk a little bit about the process. This was the process in our first version of the system. So the first version was considerably more complicated than the second version. So in the first version, the AV staff or the faculty would record the video. For the most part, it's the faculty who would do the recording. There's a camera in the room, and they hit the button. It's like a red button. They hit record, and then they hit the button again to stop, and that's all they have to worry about. I mean, it's very easy. It's a very simple camera, so they don't really have to worry about being trained or anything like that. Then the AV staff comes. They grab it's a flash-based video camera, and they would drop the file on a share. The only thing was that in this version of the system, the file name had to be very particular, because then a batch file would come through, and depending on exactly how the file name was, different things would happen to it. It would end up in a different part of the website, and it would get converted and that kind of stuff. So they had to worry about having exact file names. So if they missed one character, it didn't get converted, and it just sat there. So that was one little weakness in the version 1.0 of the system. Also, because in this version of the system it got converted, the quality of the video went quite a bit down. But anyhow, they dropped the file, a batch file came and converted it. We had a scheduled task that would generate the playlist, and then the faculty members and students could go watch the video. And in this system, because of the conversion process, we only could really do it like twice a day, because we didn't want stuff being posted while it was being converted. So twice a day it would run and refresh. So there was a bit of delay before video would get posted on the website.
So were you converting the file from?
Actually, I think that's on the. At this time, we were using a Samsung camera that had an AVI file with its own codec on it. Somehow we found software that converted it anyway. I don't know how it converted it, but it did. This a live video converter. But it lost a lot of quality, and you couldn't. There's nothing you could do about it. I mean, no matter what setting you changed, it did not look great. And I'm sure it was because of that proprietary codec. But the great thing about that software is that it was batchable. It had command line type stuff where you could go in and run a batch file on it and say, convert to this format with this quality, and you didn't have to do anything manually. So it did have that advantage, and that's why we ended up using that particular converter. A, it worked on this weird codec, and B, it was batchable. And then the technology behind it was just an IIS server and this freely available JW FLV player, which has come up in multiple sessions. Seems to be sort of the standard FLV player to embed in a web page these days. And then, as you saw before, it was progressive download. It wasn't actually streaming. It was being downloaded to the hard drive, but you could start watching it before it completely downloaded. So, what was good about version 1.0? The good thing about version 1.0 is that a live video converts pretty much any video type. So we could use a Sony camera and a Samsung camera, and it didn't really matter what we had on the other end of the lens. It could convert anything. The cons of the system was that you had to have the very precise file names for it to convert successfully. Because it was this AVI file type, the files were very large to begin with, and so it would take the AV guys, they would start a video transfer, they may be transferring 10 videos, and then like 2 hours later, it would still, it'd be finishing the transfer. And that wasn't great, particularly because, if they would come and they would think it's done, and they might stop the transfer, and then you might lose a file, them not realizing the videos were still transferring. So we had a couple of cases where files got lost. Students don't like to have to do their simulations over again, so that was definitely an issue. So we had the poor post-conversion video quality problem, and I'll show you our directions in this version. Now, a lot of these actually didn't have to do with the cameras or anything. It had to do with us just not having a great system yet. But so here was our directions from version 1.0, and you can see it was not simple. There was separate Mac and PC directions. Due to some weirdness at our university network, they had to reset their password. It was not good, and basically what that meant is that we had to go to each class and walk through what they had to do, and it was not good. We thought, well, you give a law student directions, they're going to follow them. I mean, it's amazing. I think, I don't know. So this was not working. So we made a lot of corrections, and I'll show you later our new directions, which I think are lost student proof. So version 2.0, and this I think is a much better system. So now we record the video, and then AV staff actually drop the video directly onto the web server. It's read-only, so they can't delete anything that's there. They drop a file, read-only, onto the web server for immediate posting. There's no conversion. There's no exact file names. It takes whatever file name you give it. You put Jane Doe, then Jane Doe is what appears in the system, but it just takes whatever file name you give it. And the files are much smaller, so they actually post very, a typical file that goes over in 2 minutes. It's much faster. We do have a scheduled task in Internet Explorer that generates a new playlist, but now, since there's no conversion, we can run that every hour. I mean, we can run that every 5 minutes if we want. So once a video is on the website, within an hour, it's going to be viewable. And actually, the students and the faculty can go in there and regenerate the playlist manually if they want and see it immediately. But if they don't want to do that, it'll be there within an hour. And then, after all that, the faculty member goes in and there's a little drop down where they can give students access to the video. Student A has access to this video, so they can control who can see it themselves.
They don't want you to do that?
Well,
because that's a step there.
We were happy to do it if it was the whole class or the whole section sees the video. We weren't willing to do it if it was every single day they were giving one student access to a video. So that was sort of there are classes where we do it because it's a class list and we just take the class list out of the system and put them into an AD group and we're done. But we haven't really had pushback on that. I'll show it to you. It's pretty easy.
So now you just hit a drop down, and is it adding the user's account to that file or something?
I should have shown that before.
Security.
So here's the admin section, which is available to the faculty. Actually, not to the students. So students, I don't think, can generate the playlist. So here is the one where this is the one. It regenerates the playlist. So if a faculty member wants it, they don't want to wait the hour. They can generate it manually. This is for an old version of the comments that we never implemented. It doesn't really apply anymore. We'll have to take that out. And then here's where they can add a student. So they would just put the username, and then they select which section they want to add it to. And this is automatically populated from Active Directory.
And so, there's something.
Right, it coordinates the two. And I didn't do the programming, so I don't.
So do you know I guess where the video is it doing information on the folder or just on the file? Probably just on the file. Right?
On the folder.
Okay.
Because
so is every video going to an individual folder?
In this particular, it's they're in like groups. It was okay to do it group-based and not individual-based. Like not per video, it's per group.
Okay.
So everyone
So you just have AD groups.
Right. So if the student's in Bright Counseling, which is sort of a fake, firm kind of thing, if they're in that, at first no one has access to it, and then as a student does their video, the faculty member goes in and adds them to that so that they can see their video and everyone else's videos who's already done videos. Because that's how they wanted to do it. We just did it how they wanted, because they want, once you've been recorded, they want you to be able to see everyone else who's already done the recording. So when you write, they do little write-ups of themselves, and they have to view at least one other video and sort of compare themselves.
So then you flush out those groups every semester?
Right. Right.
All right, just trying to piece out.
Yep.
Add it back.
And if they put a wrong username,
It won't work.
It gives them an error. Let's see, it used to give them a very unfriendly error. I think, now let's see if it gives a more friendly error. Maybe there is a TAC 11, TAC 12.
oh crap.
It doesn't really matter. Let me see here. Let's try something that's obviously not going to accept. So there is a TAC 12. I don't know who TAC 12 is, but they now can see that video. So yeah, it gives a pretty friendly error if we do it incorrectly.
But how do they get the faculty get the usernames?
We just provide them with a list from the, we just export it out, and here's your list of your students for your section.
So that camera that was doing eCourse, what did that run at? How many are that side?
I think we have 6 of them now, 5 or 6.
You bought 5 or 6.
Yeah.
They were in range.
They're under 200.
Yeah.
Yep, under 200.
That's pretty cool. You can do some cool stuff. You could add a checkbox. So you could actually take the course, pull the information from the course into that page, and have checkboxes with all their IDs, and just have them do checkboxes.
That's true.
So there's a lot of cool things you can do with that.
Yeah. Yeah, we've been so focused on sort of getting it to work, and yeah, you need to start.
I'll say like you can do some
Right.
cool stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I mean, the hard part is grabbing the data that you need, and once you're grabbing that data, students, groups, then you can sort of display it however you want.
Customize it.
Right. So yeah, this is the camera. It's a Sanyo. cameras are really tricky. Unfortunately, they're very tricky. And I hate to admit how many cameras I bought to find this camera. But this one generates MP4s with a very common H.264 codec. No conversion necessary. It'll play on a flash media server, like streaming. You can just put it there on a flash media server and it'll stream. The other thing it does is it supports progressive download, once again with no conversion. That may sound like a small thing, but it's pretty amazing. The camera we used before this, it also did MP4s with H.264, but when it saved the file, it did not save the file in such a way as to support progressive download. So basically with progressive download, I learned this through frustrations of looking at cameras. When it saves the file, to support progressive download, it sort of has to do like an index of that whole file, and then at the beginning of the file, it has to put like a table of contents so that the playhead knows if you're jumping around where to go. So when the camera saves it, it has to index it and put that table of contents at the beginning. We did the last camera, progressive download was not working, and we found out through some various stuff that it was putting the table of contents at the end. So, you play the whole file, and then you get to the table of contents. Well, it's too late at that point. The whole file is downloaded. So this camera happens to support progressive download. How many other cameras out there that support progressive download? I don't know. I can't know until you buy the camera, and that's the really frustrating thing. It's getting very common to have cameras that record an MP4, but they never say, in the manual or on the website, hey, it supports progressive download.
Right. Try calling it.
Does it work like a flash drive when you plug it in, you just drag and drop?
Right. So it supports SDHC, so you can do 32 gigabytes. I mean, you could record literally all day long and into the night because the file sizes are so small. And it has this web-friendly mode, which is, it doesn't have an incredibly high bit rate, those kind of things. So it has small file sizes. That's the other problem too. If you get a high-end camera, they don't tend to have sort of like a web-friendly mode. And then you get these gargantuan files that no one's going to want to download. So it is really hard to find the right camera. This one's working for us. Unfortunately, at some point they're going to stop manufacturing, and then we'll be out buying cameras again, trying to figure out what to use.
How much was that camera?
It's under 200. It's 190 or something like that. There's a big caveat here, which I'll get to in a second, unfortunately, with this camera. It was almost perfect.
149
almost, right. And we're still using the same website and the same JW FLP player. So here's the camera. It's very small. You can use a standard tripod with it. That's all nice. Here is where it gets a little bad. These two accessories right here. So I get this camera and I gave it to my AV folks and it's working fantastic. And then one of them calls me and says, "There's no AC adapter for this." And in some of our classes, they record for 2 hours and you can't do it off battery. It's like, oh man, it was perfect. Well, we look in the manual, it's like, oh, you want an AC adapter, here's the 2 accessories you need. Great. Well, those accessories are not available in the United States. I called, I looked on the internet, I called Sanyo USA. It's not available in the United States. It's in the United States manual, but it's not available in the United States.
Do you have to get one of those international plug adapters?
No, because actually, when you buy this accessory here, you don't get the plug part. It's a standard like 2, which you have 50 million of them probably sitting around, so that's not a problem. I was banging my head against the wall. I was so close to perfection here. I eventually actually figured out how to get those accessories. I went on the internet and I found Japanese importers, and I had Japanese importers import them for me.
You bought extra ones, right?
Yes, I bought a nice big.
How much did they cost? More than the camera?
No. It probably ended up being about $80 for each pair. I got, the shipping is what kills you. But I bought them in a bulk enough that the shipping, per unit. Now, if you were buying just one set, it'd probably be at least $100, because of the shipping. You know, it worked. And so if you're doing this and you want to find out my Japanese importer, I can hook you up. He was it's like it seems like a one-man show. He's one guy and he's super nice and super helpful, and it was great.
Same guys with the barking dog, USB drive.
Pick a different guy. So that was sort of
So you got them fairly quickly and solved your problem.
right.
You've been to that site.
Everything was fine.
Everything was fine. Well, I mean, there are. This is still less than ideal because this actually goes in place of the battery. You have to take the battery out and put this in instead. So you don't. You sort of assume that when you have a camera and you unplug the AC, that your battery's going to take over and you're fine. This, you unplug it and whoop, there goes the camera. It doesn't save the file successfully because once again it has to do all that indexing, put in the table of contents. That file is gone. So if you have a student, you're recording for 2 hours, they come and they knock the AC out, that 2 hours is gone. You're not getting it back.
Ouch.
So what we've gaffing tape is really tape that thing on there really good so that it doesn't get kicked out easily. That was our solution to make. Because we did have it get kicked out once. Unfortunately, in that particular case, it was not a big deal. It wasn't something that was super critical that be recorded. But
Was your search including like all ranges of expensive camera? It just happened to be that was very inexpensive. I mean, if you,
right. The problem with the expensive cameras is there are expensive cameras that do H.264, MPEG-4, but they don't have a low quality mode typically. Now, if there was one that did, that would be fantastic, but they don't tend to.
How low quality are you talking about? Are you talking 320 by?
Yes, I think it's
240?
320.
By 200.
Yeah, and I think it's 15 frames per second.
And you like it low because of the lower file size.
Right, and just for students, I mean, if they're at home on a sketchy DSL connection or whatever. I mean, once again, it's progressive download, but still, I think you wouldn't need super low quality because the compression is really quite good.
Probably looks better than VHS.
Right. You saw the video there before. I mean, that's the low quality mode, and it's fine. It was better than it was before, that's for sure. But I tell you, if anyone finds a camera that has an AC adapter and does progressive download H.264, please let me know right away. I would love to.
How can we, without creating a system like you did, how can we find out if it's progressive download or not?
I have.
Because I have a camera in mind, but I don't know if it's progressive download or not.
It's H.264 and
It is
MPEG-4.
H.264, yeah.
I mean, just plop it on a website and see if when you go to the site, if it lets you play it. If it's not progressive, what will happen is you'll go to the site and nothing will happen for like a minute, and then all of a sudden that whole white bar will be there to play it, but you can't play it until it completely downloads.
But what we got, we have the Samsung SX20.
Yes,
So-
that's the same. I think that's the one we used
We
in
had
the middle
10.
here. There's actually a middle step.
Oh, you had another one in the, okay.
In the middle, yes, that one does not
No,
do
it's
progressive.
MX20, yeah.
Yeah, it does not do progressive download. If it's
Okay.
the same camera, I'm thinking of. It does support streaming. You can actually stream that video with no conversion, but again, it doesn't really have a real low quality mode. So
Right, it's 640 by 480 is the lowest.
right, and then you get into if the person doesn't have a fan. We actually did that for a while. We had a middle step. This is really version 3, I guess, but version 2 never got implemented, so I didn't bother to include it with that camera. And we had it all going, and it was working great in the office with our nice, wired internet connection. I went home and tried it on my DSL, and buffer.
Yeah, we've been putting ours out as WMVs, and I have a really low quality. I have to convert it over, of course, and it's a really low quality version that goes out
Right.
for that reason.
Yeah, that camera was so close, but not quite.
did you look at any like still cameras with video?
I did not. That could. Are you seeing some that?
We've been looking kind of at
Okay.
that. I haven't looked at specifically figures.
Right. This has been a while since I looked at this, and I couldn't even find like people discussing it on forums and stuff about. I mean, you'd think people would be talking about it,
Right.
but I really couldn't find a lot out there.
The new Canon Neo series, some of their top line stills,
do remarkable live video too.
Yeah, I know the Canons are fantastic that way.
So it's a matter of finding one that supports the protocol that you need.
Right.
But that'll do everything. Probably know to hook up to the network,
Right.
do other stuff, and then
Right.
use it in portable fashion.
Yeah, and if it was easy to get the information about the progressive download, then it would be great because you can't buy every camera to try it out, you know.
Is there a reason to not use a webcam and record directly to your laptop? And sure, we did away with the cameras. We were
Right.
tired of getting parts back and not the whole thing, and just went with webcams. But we're not saving it to a server. The students are responsible for burning a disk and turning it in.
Right.
But is there something that would?
We thought it was easier to take the computer out of it because the faculty are doing the recording. The nice thing about this camera, once again, when you get these low-end cameras, the nice thing about them is like there's a red button, start, stop, start, stop, start, stop. So there's no training on it. I mean, other than the AV person saying, hit the red button to start it and hit the red button to stop it.
Does the camera have a viewfinder on the back? You actually see the picture through, so they know. And when they hit the red button, it's not just like a little red light flashing or anything like that.
Right. It's obvious that you're recording. Actually, that other camera, that Samsung camera, was not quite so obvious for recording. So we did have a couple times faculty members not realizing. They thought they hit the record button, but they didn't. This particular camera, it's obvious that we're recording. We did buy on this. We bought the license, the commercial license for this, just so we could remove the watermark. They've changed recently. They've changed with the FLV player. If you're the newest version, to get rid of the watermark, you have to pay. But it's like $40. It's nothing huge. So the pros of version 2, we probably talked about most of these. It's drag and drop. There's no conversion, no bash files, no precise file names, any of that stuff. The quality is actually better, even though the file sizes are smaller. So it's really easy and quick to transfer files. We're now posting videos very, very quickly because it's so fast to transfer the files over. And we have a script running every hour to generate the playlists. We've gotten our directions now to a much more manageable. So here's our directions now, compared to where they were before, and that's Mac or PC. Now you can use any browser. I mean, really, a student, all you have to do is give them the URL, and at that point, it's intuitive. We just you feel like you sort of need to give directions, but they're hardly even necessary. The cons, the really big con is that you have, so far we only know of this one camera, that we have to use this particular camera, and of course the Japanese importer. That's the other con. And also, when you're doing a low-end camera, you don't have the option of an external mic. That it'd be really nice to be able to have an external mic to have the audio quality to be better. Although our faculty are happy with the audio, they're saying this particular camera does a good job of picking up the audio. Once again, for these kind of one-to-one sessions, we're not trying to record a huge lecture hall.
So you can set it, can you go back real quick?
Sure.
So you're saying it'll go in FLV or H.2, it'll go either one of the formats? Where's this
Well, right, our system wouldn't necessarily need MPEG-4s. Our system, we could, if we found a camera that recorded an FLV, that would be fine. Once again, if it was progressive. Not too many cameras are doing that. There's much more cameras doing MPEG-4 and H.264 than FLV.
So when this gets loaded into their temporary folder on the computer, is it an MP4 as far as the folder is concerned, or is it an FLV?
I don't know. I haven't looked.
I was just wondering as far as the copying part.
Right. I'm not sure. And I know this. We looked at it. You're talking about when it gets cached locally.
Yeah.
It's not readable. It's not like completely obvious. I don't think it even says it like with the same file name or anything like that. So
temporary documents, locate file location.
Yeah, they wouldn't have to do that. You have to boot all the crap out of there and make sure there's nothing in there, then play it with the one file there.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it would literally be easier for them to just get a free program to capture. Right. So.
And this is like a faculty sort of, oh no, what if?
Right.
Rather than something that students actually want to wait for that.
Right, right, right,
Although
absolutely.
you have to take that precaution.
Right, right. Yeah, that was a faculty requirement, that was not our requirement at all. So feedback. You know, I talked to faculty about it and some students, and they're both reporting that they watch the videos a lot more than when it's VHS. And particularly they watch, before they would watch their video and one other video because that was the bare minimum requirement. Now they actually watch their video, the students watch their video, and they'll watch other people's videos too because it's so easy to do. They can just browse around, click on other people's videos. So, you know, they're watching many more videos than they used to. Faculty reporting that they really like that they can review the video when they're doing grading, or they even say, like, a student will come in to dispute their grade, and they just go to the website and say, well, here is where you're going wrong. So they can sort of back themselves up with, this is why I'm giving you the grade that you are getting. So they really like that. Sort of an unintended consequence, to some extent, is now we're having more faculty requests that their classes be recorded, which is fine if it's a skills type course like this, where it's one-to-one, but we're also having faculty for bigger classes asking for recording, and we, to be honest, are using the system, even though maybe it's not ideal, because it's what we have, it's very easy. But, you know, it doesn't work as well for a lecture hall, so that's something we need to deal with.
Is there a mic input on that camera?
There is not.
Or-
Yeah, I know. They like that like the head faculty members can review adjuncts and see how they're doing. So that's sort of nice. They don't have to actually go there to see what their adjuncts are up to. They like that they can skip around in the video. You know, it's a little easier than VHS to find different spots in a video. And actually, our clinic is. I tried to get our clinic using this system, and instead of them using this system, I got them all set up. What they did is they started taking the cameras out in the field. So they're using the cameras, but they're not using the system. They're using the cameras for, if they have clients who can't come into the office, a student will go out there and interview them at their apartment, and then they can take that back to their faculty member, and the two of them can review that video together, or, you know, filming a crime scene, that kind of stuff. So they love the cameras, but they're not yet using the actual complete system. So that was an unintended consequence. What are our outstanding issues? One issue we have is we are getting requests now for a commenting feature, and I can show you where we're at with that right now. Do I still have Internet Explorer open? There we go. So this is not fully working. Actually, the person who has done the programming for this is a student worker of mine named Omri, and he has done the programming for this, and he's gotten very far on the commenting, but it's not quite fully functional yet. So the commenting is you play the file. If you want to make a comment, you just pause it, enter your comment. Hit submit. It says that your comment is successful. You have to refresh the page at this point. I don't know if I'll do that in the future, but
YouTube comments are the same way.
you have to refresh it.
Bad storm, for sure.
I think it's not going to work. All right, I don't know why that didn't work, but it was working yesterday.
We're here on a spring day, right?
Yeah, too bad nobody got to the outside to enjoy it this evening.
What it would actually do is we actually have the system now where it uses closed captioning. JWFLB player has closed captioning, and it puts the comment right on top of the video. And our thought on that was, well, that way when a comment comes up, you're keeping your eye on the video as opposed to over to the sides. That was our thought. But after hearing the media notes demonstration, I realized these are law faculty. They're not going to make these nice little comments that are going to be great in closed captioning. So I think we had a little flawed thinking there. So I emailed Omri about this and said, I think we need to rethink this and see what we can do to allow for longer comments. It may be that we'll do a hybrid system where it shows the comment on the video, but then it gets truncated and the longer comment will be on the side. I'm not sure how we'll end up implementing that. But really the lion's share of the work he's done, because to do that, you have to collect the playhead of the video. You have to collect the user. You have to collect which file is playing. You have to collect all that information before you can write it back out. And he's gotten all that done, so all that information is being collected successfully. Now he just needs to figure out how to write it back out in a format that either displays to the side or overlays in the video. So I'm sure we can do it. It's just a matter of exactly how we're going to make it work.
Would you have to refresh every time you make a comment, or can you play, pause, comment, play, pause, comment, play? You know what I'm saying?
The faculty member would be able to do all their comments without refreshing. It's only if you want to see the comments, then you have to refresh. The idea of this commenting feature was sort of like the idea of the whole system in general. We're trying to make it where there is literally no learning curve, where you can do it intuitively. Now, Media Notes works great for faculty who are really committed and they want to do robust commenting. They're willing to learn the system. They're willing to deal with the files and transporting them and that kind of stuff. But we want a system where a faculty member and a student can use it, and they honestly don't need any training. You just type your comment and hit submit, and that's it. And I think for a lot of situations, that's really all that will be necessary. And if faculty want more than that, we'll train them on Media Notes. That's fine. Like I said, another issue we're having is it's starting to creep into other areas where we're for larger lectures, and is that really an appropriate use of the system? And we need to sort of think about maybe we need to develop something else for that particular case. Can we find another camcorder? Because we're stuck on this one right now, and it's not ideal because of the power supply, because of no mic input. When VPC CG9 not be available? That's something we need to think about. And finally, we have to come up with a catchy name. And since Omri is the one that wrote it, I thought, well, maybe I could make an acronym out of Omri. But what I've come up with right now is online media to reinforce instruction. That's the best I've come up with. I don't know if that works, but in honor, because he's put a lot of work into this, and I really appreciate it. So once you get on this kind of system, you start thinking about how else could we use this, and here are some things that I've thought about. One thing I've thought about for the issue of live recording with password protection, I thought, well, I wonder if we could use Adobe Connect for that. We have Adobe Connect Pro on the campus, free for the law school to use. I wonder if we could, if a faculty member wanted to be in live, hook the camera up to a computer, use Adobe Connect Pro. They could, it's password protected. It uses the same username and passwords as everything else. They could go in. They could comment actually live using Adobe Connect Pro. And then we could be recording the session, which actually I think records an FLV. And then we could put the FLV into the system. It would take it right away. So once again, the only problem with that is that we'd have to have a faculty member who's willing to learn Adobe Connect Pro, which is not bad, but it's, once again, it's not just like you can use it with no training whatsoever. So using the first version of the system, which had that software that converted pretty much any file type, you could do something where you recorded the screen using like Camtasia or Captioning or something, converted that, usually those recorded AVIs typically, and then convert the AVI to FLV or MP4 and post those. If someone asked for that kind of recording, we could do that. We could have students check out the camcorders in the library and do their own simulations with each other, because these are little webcams. You can have a little tripod, little desktop tripod. And we could set up a Dropbox for them, and they could drop the files themselves. We could do that tomorrow. That would be no problem at all if a faculty member, instead of wanting, a lot of schools, they don't have adjuncts and stuff doing this. They just have students doing it with each other. If a faculty member wanted to do that, that would not be a problem. I've had the idea that we could be giving these camcorders to faculty, librarians, students, anyone who wanted to do like a video blog. And once again, they could self-post the files. I've thought about, like, for admissions, if a video blog maybe on the life of a law student for admissions. We could give this camera to some 1L, and they could be recording themselves and posting, and we could have students across the country sort of who are interested in law school take a look at our sort of the day in the life of a law student.
How do they get the file to the server?
It's just create a file share. We just give them read-only access to it, and it actually drops directly onto the website. So the only problem is if we had an AV, like sometimes they'll drop it the wrong place. They can't correct that. They have to call someone on the IT staff to go in and move the video to the right spot. So you could do that. Students could put a shortcut on their desktop to the file share, and they could record their videos and plop it onto the file share. And within an hour it would be posted. Another thought I've had is, a lot of security cameras where you can have multiple cameras and you can control them from a central location. Could we integrate that kind of system into this? Particularly because I just found out that there is a manufacturer, Axis, that is making H.264 video cameras now. That was news to me, but so the sort of the security camera market is also starting to go to MPEG-4 and H.264. So we might be able to integrate that into the system if we wanted a more automated type system. Those are just thoughts, and a lot of it will depend on who comes to me and says, I want this, and then we can try some of these things. So, we have 5 minutes. Any further questions?
So, as you were talking, I was jumping out there looking around at H.264 and Ethernet, just doing searches to see what I could find. My guess is you wouldn't get the table of contents at all.
Right.
You'd probably have to manipulate the file after the fact.
Right. I think so too. You'd probably have to capture the stream,
right.
And then you
run
would
it
have to
through
go
something
through some kind of encoding process just to make.
Right.
Like we found, I think like QuickTime even when QuickTime writes it out, you get the same file. It's H.264 already. QuickTime will write it out, but it'll put the table of contents in it,
right.
And it's ready to go. But.
And then the other comment is, my guess would be that if Sanyo's figured out how to put this table of contents at the start, that you'd probably have pretty good luck just buying one each of the various models above it in its product line
Yeah.
and testing them out.
Right.
And they're only the model you use is they listed on their website as a previous model. They have a VPC CG10, a VPC CA9, and then they have 4 other models that are all a little bigger. And
Do they all say H.264?
they all shoot H.264. Very few of them shoot the 320 by 240 mode you use.
Right.
But a couple of it, the very highest end model shoots a format that's not much bigger than it. So if they figured out that algorithm inside their camera, then chances are they're just going to use it again and again in their product line.
And the higher end model probably does have an AC power adapter.
Yes, it does. I checked. It does.
I may be buying that very, very soon. Just to
Well,
see.
I may be. It's been an interesting presentation.
Yeah.
Could you just quickly explain why progressive download is really important? Rather than just streaming.
We could be streaming it. We absolutely could be streaming. And we actually developed the system to stream, like I said before, and then we just hit the thing where with that particular camera, it was not really usable like with DSL. You needed a really good network connection because it had that. So we just got lots of buffering because it was way too high. So then we were like, well, we have to convert it, and then we're back to where we were. Now, we probably could be using this camera, the new camera, the Sanyo, with streaming. The only reason why we don't is because this is easier. I mean, because then we have 2 servers. We'd have to incorporate our Flash media server and this web server together. And our Flash media server we're using for all of our lectures. And it's sort of nice just to keep them separate, and it's easier, but you absolutely could. If you have a Flash media server already, we did it, it worked.
Well, you just might have more options with cameras.
Right, because then you don't need to worry about that.
Requirement.
Right, you don't need to worry about the progressive download at that point. You just need to have a camera that produces a file with a low bit rate, which there are probably a lot of those.
Would running a conversion script, obviously, you want to do less and less and have it come out of the camera perfect, but the ability to distribute more cameras, have them, without funky plugs and all of that, seems from the previous session on captioning, the converter converts them into a format that progressively downloads. So if there's some weekly maintenance cycle where you just script that process, you're able to give them those features, but just not right away. Right,
and that's what we were doing. That's what we were doing. What's nice about this system, when you have no scripting or converting involved, is that it becomes very easy to have the end user self-post.
Right.
Because they can self-post the exact location, and it's not like that you post to some kind of Dropbox, it gets converted, and then somehow it has to get to the right place. The user puts it in the right place.
It's another point of
Right.
failure, too.
Right. So, but, it worked. It worked for us to do that, and it does have its pros, because at that point, like I said, we could put pretty much any camera into play, and it would work. And that does have a lot of flexibility.
Which version of the Flash media server are you running?
Not the latest. With 2.5 is 3 the latest?
Well, there's like a lower end one.
With the low end one, the one that's like $700, $800 for education. That one, yeah. That doesn't have the. It has streaming, but it doesn't have authentication.
Okay.
Because we're doing authentication actually at the IIS web level, so we didn't need it.
Cool. Very cool.
Any other questions? Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.